What's good, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Comic Sessions. I'm your host, Sean Thompson, and this week we're going to talk about a whole bunch of new comics. We're going to talk about what some of my favorite Halloween/October themed comics are, and then we're going to talk about what's new. So, without further ado, let's get into what's new this week. So, like I said, there's a ton of new comics this week. I picked up 10 new comics. Now, one of them is kind of a trade, less of a single issue, but we'll get to that. Why don't we start right into it, and we will start with the one Marvel comic I picked up this week. And that comic was X-Men #1. I picked up the Art Germ variant. Ooh, look at that. Ooh. But yeah, I thought it was a cool variant. Actually, I didn't even pick it, I don't think. I'm pretty sure Robert and Jen over at the Dragon just know I love all the Art Germ stuff, and grabbed it out for me, so thanks so much, guys. So let's dig into it. It was cool because we get to see Cyclops being a hero again, being the leader of the X-Men again. Like, it's been a while since he's really led the X-Men and been a strong leader. Like, they kind of leaned on Wolverine for a while. He killed Xavier. There was a whole thing. Yeah, I'll summarize the issue really quickly. So we start off with, it's a flashback of Xavier and Scott just chatting as Scott was a kid. He was still afraid to use his powers. So there's some bubbles about him being too afraid, and like, he won't open his eyes. And Xavier tells him, no, it's okay. And then he opens his eyes and he sees all red, and it's because he's got the glasses that he always wears that stop the other dimensional rays from shooting out of his eyes, because they're actually portals to a different dimension. Fun Cyclops fact. Then just a couple pages later, we get a time jump. They're taking down the last of Orcus. So we get Scott, Aurora, so Storm, Magneto, and Polaris, I think it was. Hang on. Yep, Polaris. And they're taking down what they think is the last of Orcus. So we see some cool fight scenes, and then some of the Orcus guys inject themselves with some weird, like, I don't know, mutagen or anti-mutagen type thing, and they revert to being like big gorillas that then attack Magneto and them. And Magneto's just like, nah, I got this. You guys go ahead and do what you gotta do. So Magneto's off there fighting off some big gorilla guys, and the Storm, Polaris, and Cyclops move ahead, and we find out that they're really there to free all the other mutants that are there. All these little kids and stuff like that Orcus has been like experimenting on and whatnot. So they free those kids, and then they get a jump back to Krakoa, and it's Aurora and Scott kind of chat a little bit. Aurora's worried about one of the kids. Magneto's heralded as a hero, and he's kind of getting a hero's welcome, which is cool to see for him. And then Scott goes home. Then we get a cut, and we find out that Orcus has this big thing in space, it looks like. The leader's still there. The X-Men killed his son, apparently. And he's none too happy. Then we cut to Scott being at home. He's chatting with his dad. Wolverine's there. We find out there's another Summers brother. It was kind of leaked a little bit ago, ahead of this, of course, but so we get to see him a little bit. He's weird and overcooking Wolverine's meat. Never a good idea. Don't mess with Wolverine's meat. I had a double entendre I did not mean for. Took me a second to get it. But then Scott and his brothers give their dad a little plant. He's like, this is great, thanks. And then they explain that it's actually a portal so that he can drop in whenever, no matter how far he is in the galaxy and stuff like that. So it's really sweet of them. And we just get a little bit more family bonding stuff there with Scott and his dad being like, just getting to know each other a little bit more and being like, I'm really happy you seem happy, son, and stuff like that. Then we cut to one of Orkos' scientists. She's potentially bringing back one of her husbands. She's bringing back her husband, potentially. It's all very odd. She has some kind of crystal thing. She puts it into a machine, and that's kind of where we leave off. That's the end of the issue. But again, I dug seeing Cyclops be a leader again. Be the leader of the X-Men and stuff like that. I thought it was really cool. You know what? We're going to jump right into the next book now. Which book should we talk about next? So, next, we're going to talk about a Boom comic. We're going to talk about Something is Killing the Children, issue number 2. I really, really dug issue 1, and issue 2 is just the same. I loved it. The art style's still cool. There's still big monsters doing shit. I always like to crack open the book when I'm talking about it. It helps refresh my memory, especially because I'm not big on taking notes for it. But, so in issue 1, we left off with this little boy got, like, all of his friends got murdered in the woods, and then this badass chick who kills monsters came to town. Really, really briefly. If you want a full summary, go check out one of my previous issues of Comic Sessions. I go through the whole thing. But in this issue, we start off with a different side. We start off with totally new characters. We haven't seen them before. Tommy and his mom. And we find out that Tommy's sister is missing. And she's been missing for a while. And the mom doesn't think anybody's doing anything. And then Tommy's got to go for work. And there's a big scary monster in his car. Just waiting for him. Just sitting there. Being scary. Then we get a big splashy Something is Killing the Children's page. And now we see the characters from the last one show up at Tommy's work. They're showing up at the diner that he works at, which is called Apple Beams, and I love it. I love when comics do stuff like that, like change something just ever so slightly. But basically, her and the little boy have gone to this diner to kind of chat and stuff like that because they have giant tables and nobody else goes to diners anymore. They're kind of talking about what's going on and what's happening and stuff like that. And then Tommy comes over and he realizes kind of what they're doing. And he immediately, because he recognizes the little boy and he sees her with this girl and they have a map of all these things. And he's like, and she asks the kid from the last issue, James, where the little girl who went missing was. And then Tommy slams his finger down and is like, here, that's my sister. Did you have something to do with it? What's going on? He gets really agitated, and then she kicked the girl from the last issue. I don't remember her name. Kind of kicks the crap out of him, slams his face against the table, and just goes, I'm going to let you go. You won't see me again later. Then we cut to her getting back to her motel or something like that, and she's talking to this creepy little doll thingy that's talking back, real spooky like. And then the sheriff shows up later, being like, she might have something to do with this because Tommy called. And the last scene is the little doll thing is apparently some big monster thing that's also terrifying, but maybe it's good in a different like kind of way. I don't know. It was really cool. I preferred issue 1, but I get that this one was a lot of setup for what will happen later in the arc. It just wasn't a big, exciting issue in and of itself, but it's setting up for what will happen later with this big thing that's going to come into play, and Tommy's going to be more of a character, and maybe the sheriff will be kind of an antagonist to them, and stuff like that. It's really interesting. It kind of flushes out a little bit of it gives you kind of a hint at the backstory for the girl, the main girl. I don't remember her name. I will eventually, which is cool. I liked it. Yeah, that is Something Is Killing the Children. Why don't we talk about the biggest part of the pile next? Let's talk about DC Comics. Right. Now, of the comics I picked up this week, hang on, this many were DC Comics. So this is 3, 6, 7 comics. I'm not going to go through them all because it'll take me forever. I'm very, very slow when I describe things, as I'm sure you guys are kind of getting used to by now. So I'll talk about a couple I really dug. Actually, I have another Marvel comic. I missed that. So 6 are DC Comics. Let's jump back and do the Marvel comic really quick. And it was J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man number 2. It was a good follow-up. Okay, we'll just go through it and then I'll give you my kind of thoughts. So, we open with Cadaverous. I gotta remember his name.
One eternity later.
I think it's Cadaverous. We'll go with that, and then I'll correct myself later. But we open with him kind of having this little monologue saying, "I'll be back," basically.
I'll be back.
He's gonna try and start again. It kind of hints at maybe Spider-Man was the key to something for him, which is really cool. But it's just 3 panels of that, and then it cuts immediately to little Ben Parker, talking to Aunt May, because in the end of the last issue, he found his father's spider suit. And he's basically saying, "I can't forgive him," and May's kind of trying to. It's this back and forth of May saying he was a good person, he was just hurt, and that's why he had to leave it all behind, and Ben going, "I can't forgive him. He gave up on all these people. He's the reason my mom's dead. He's this," and stuff like that. It's very. I can see how it's the argument of freshman in high school kind of thing, which is what Ben is supposed to be, I think. So it kind of makes sense there. And then May is like, it broke him. Then we get Ben goes off to school and he runs into the girl from detention. I again don't remember her name, but I will. And she kind of startles him while he's looking at a picture of Spider-Man, and he cracks his phone with his hand with his super spider strength. And then he tries to play it off like, "No, I just dropped this weeks ago, it's fine." Then she asks if he wants to hang out later, if she can come over, that kind of thing. It's getting real spicy for little Ben. Then we cut again quickly to Ben out in the backyard at the barbecue with his dad's spider suit, dousing it in accelerant and then dropping a match on it. And Aunt May is kind of like, "Do you have to burn it?" And he's like, "I don't want it here when..." Here's her name. It doesn't say her name. But then she shows up at the door in her own costume. And she's like, "We're going to go out. Do you have anything to wear? Something similar? Because you need a secret identity." And he goes quickly running back out to the barbecue. And he's like, "I hope it's not burnt. I hope it's not burnt." And of course it's fucking burnt. And then Aunt May is just over his shoulder like, he had more than one. So she finds him a spider suit. And she's like, "Oh, it might be a little big on you, Ben." But then she's like, the girl who came over to see him is like, "Are you ready?" And then we cut to Cadaverous again, kind of talking to his legions of weird robot things. But we get text bubbles of Ben and the girl from the last issue going, "Ready to do what? Ready to save the world." So the cut to Cadaverous there is just to kind of set up, "You're actually going to have to save the world, idiot." Which is kind of cool. Then we cut out to the streets, and it turns out she just wants to graffiti some stuff and try and be like, "We need healthcare," and stuff like that. So she's trying to be like, do demonstrations kind of, but through graffiti, which is okay. But then a cop shows up and they start to run away, and they run into a bunch more cops. She's like, "Oh no, we can't get away." And Ben's like, "Yeah, we can." And he goes, "Put." I love that. And then they're swinging across, and he's telling her he found out his dad was Spider-Man, and then they slam into a billboard that says "Remember the Departed," and it's Hulk, Thor, Cap, and Black Widow. So we kind of get the impression that they're dead. Then we cut to Peter off on assignment somewhere in some war-torn country. And he's starting to see the news, and so is Cadaverous, and we're seeing both of them see it kind of simultaneously. And they're both seeing somebody in a spider suit swinging across New York. Then we cut back to little Ben. He's standing on the ceiling upside down, because spider powers, you have to stand upside down on the ceiling. It's the only way to do things. And he's reading his phone, checking his text messages. There's a Oscorp building on fire or collapsing or something, and he's kind of like, I have to do something. So he goes and saves the day, but he gets attacked by cadaverous robot things, but he quickly crushes them with a big steel beam and saves this one dude. Then he sits on a bus the whole way home, on top of the bus, I might mention, the whole way home, opens the door, and there's Peter, and he just says, "Hey there, Spider-Man," with his little claw hand. And that's it. That is all that's in that issue. So, I dug it. But, I found it, because JJ is a movie, he's a director, I found it cut more the way a movie does, kind of thing. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just a little different than what I expected. I was expecting it to linger on a scene a little longer than it did, but it seemed to kind of jump from action point to action point kind of thing to try and be like, all right, we're setting this up quick, we're getting you in, we're getting going kind of thing. Which was, again, it was fine. It just, I would have liked a little bit more time spent with certain things. But it's only issue 2. I'm sure it'll all mesh together really well as a whole storyline. It's just currently, I think, the constant cut from, okay, if it was a movie, it'd be a bunch of cuts of 5-minute scenes, if that. Whereas in a comic, it's a bunch of cuts of like a page or 2 max, which seems a little too fast to me. But that's just my quick opinion. But that was Spider-Man number 2. Now we will get on to the DC comics, of which there were 6. So we'll talk about a couple that I really dug. We'll start with probably my favorite, which is Superman Smashes the Klan. It is aimed at some younger readers and stuff like that, which is awesome. It's targeted at the right demographic, I think, to make large-scale change. But it starts off with Superman fighting a Nazi. He beats him up and stuff like that, and then he starts seeing himself as an alien. There's some weird stuff going on there because he is an alien. I'm going to go through this one really quickly because it is a trade more so than it is a single issue. So I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker than I normally would for something like this, but I do think everybody should pick it up. It's really, really good, and it's not so young that, like, it's not such a young reader that it feels below you to read it, kind of thing, if that makes sense. What? Chris is giggling at that statement. So, Superman takes down a Nazi, and there's a little backstory there, and then I believe Jimmy goes off to some small town USA type place where he's the manager, I believe, of a baseball team, a little league baseball team, of which a young Asian man has just joined the team, and he's kind of beating out this blonde white kid who then gets real mad later on about it because he starts saying some racist shit I will not repeat. Well, it's not so bad to repeat because it is in a kid's book, but I don't feel comfortable saying it out loud. It's not something I agree with, so it's not something I'd like to say. But he's being kind of a dick, being racist to these two, well, the young Asian man and his little sister. So Jimmy's like, you need to get out of here, go home kind of thing to the, what's his name? Chuck. His name is Chuck, so we'll refer to him as Dickhead Chuck. So Dickhead Chuck gets sent home, and we find out that his dad came home. He's like, "What are you doing like this? Why? We found your jersey in the trash. What's going on?" Kind of stuff. He's real mad, and then it turns out his dad is like the Grand Wizard of the KKK in that area. They call it the Clan of the Fiery Cross, but it's the KKK. There's the white suits and everything. Then we jump back to Superman. He's having some weird things where he's seeing everybody as literal alien, like green aliens. It's kind of odd there. Then we cut back to the Asian family, and they're just at home, and they got woken up in the middle of the night to the KKK burning a fucking cross on their front yard. And the little girl's like, "Tommy, who's..." And they don't know who's doing it, kind of thing. And then the dad hands his son a little Molotov cocktail and tells him to throw it at the Asian family's house, to which he does, but he misses and it kind of bounces off. Then we cut to young Clark, and him and a friend are hanging out. They're reading some comics, and then somebody starts to pick on his friend, and Clark starts to fly and his eyes glow, and he finds out that his friend was kind of a little racist too. Basically the whole story is don't be racist because racists are dicks. But we'll continue on. We flash back to the little Asian family, and the KKK people basically pull up on this little kid and kidnap him with a rope, which very much kind of hints at they were going to lynch this little dude, right? Like, if you read into it a little bit. Then we get a little girl running into the little girl runs to the Daily Bugle. I guess the small town is very close to Metropolis. And then Superman's kind of Clark kind of finds out, and he's on the case. He's running out. He does the stereotypical phone booth change, which is great. Then we cut back, and Tommy is in the truck with the KKK people, and he's trying to break free. He rolls out of the car, but he ends up in the river. Then the little girl goes to Dickhead Chuck's house with Jimmy, and she's like, "I know you did it. You had to do something. Tommy's missing." And he has a bat, and he swings it at her, but Superman's in the way. The thing breaks. We find out Dickhead Chuck's hero is Superman, and stuff like that, and he's starting to rethink all of his shit and be like, "Oh, I am the bad guy in this, aren't I?" So he quickly changes his mind. He's like, "I know where they would have taken him." Superman grabs them both under each arm, and that's it. And it was really good. Again, I summarized very, very quickly there. Go read it for yourselves, because it's a little longer than that, and there's more to it. But it's really, really cool. And yeah, it's got a good message behind it. Don't be dickheads. Don't be like Dickhead Chuck. It's not cool. So yeah, that was Superman Smashes the Klan. A really good young readers read that anybody could read and learn something from. Moving on to some more adult themed books. I got 3 more I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about Batman Knightfall. It's Tales from the Dark Multiverse. And basically it's a big what if book. And the thing is, what if Batman never beat Azrael after the Knightfall storyline, and Azrael just kind of kept being terrible Batman, and it's fucking terrible. Everything is bad in that universe, or multiverse, or no, not universe. At least for Gotham. So we open with the dude from Flash Forward, the big space guy, kind of talking and walking you through what happened in Knightfall. But then we get Azrael winning, and it's like 30 years later, and you can see that Gotham has kind of been rebuilt. We find out that Azrael is addicted to venom. That's what's making him strong, making him able to keep going. He's been cleaning up the streets. his way. And then we cut to him in Wayne Tower. We find out what the fuck actually happened to Bruce Wayne. It turns out that he has a head distended onto a metal thing and a torso. And that's it. Azrael has kept him alive somehow, just barely, but just as a head. And they have a little disagreement / argument there. Then we cut to the streets where we find out just what Azrael's justice is like, with a bunch of the Penguin being beheaded by a flaming sword by one of his underlings, and then another guy also getting beheaded. It's all very bad. Azrael needs to take more venom because he's like, I don't know what's going on, that kind of stuff. There's a big army being built out on the outskirts of Gotham and stuff. And then somebody's infiltrated Gotham. And he's trying to find out what's happened. And he eventually gets up to Wayne Tower, goes all the way up, and finds Bruce Wayne. So you get the idea that his entire mission was to get to Bruce Wayne and find out what's going on. We still don't fully know who he is, or we find out who this random person is now, and it turns out it's Bane's son. The exact person who, or not Bane's son, but Bane, the person who kind of caused all this to start to go awry, who caused Batman to need a replacement for a little bit, and made him choose Azrael kind of hastily. His son is there, and they kind of talk a little bit for like a second, and then Bane's son hulks the fuck out because he just has like venom in his veins. He doesn't need an injection to turn huge. So he cuts down Wayne. Bruce Wayne doesn't really know what use he can be because he's just a head and a torso. So then we cut back to Azrael doling out his version of justice again. He's killing a lot of random people. Then we find out what happened to Bane, and it's Azrael tracked him down pretty soon after and killed him right in front of the little kid. Then they're kind of going through the sewers, and we find out who this kid's mom is, and it's Shiva. So this kid's parents are dope as fuck. And basically the two of them are there to try and take back Gotham because Saint Batman, as he's called, which is Azrael, is not doing some good things. He's doing a lot of bad. And basically Bruce is like, you don't need me. There's nothing I can do. And they're both like, no, we need you to be... When you were here, things were alright for Gotham. It was going better. People had hope because you were there. Now people are just in despair kind of thing. They're like, and he's like, I'm just a head and a torso. And they're like, we can give you more than that. And they push a little button and these things come out. And it cuts away. And it's Azrael having... he's trying to lift up a pillar that's been broken underneath Gotham. And he has a vision of Saint Dumas who's telling him he's weak, he's not good enough, all this stuff. And then he's just strong enough, but then he kind of drowns. His lackeys pull him out of the water, drag him back to his version of the Batcave where he goes to look for his venom, and it's missing. And we get a cut to Shiva and Bane's son sitting there kind of starting this argument. We find out that Azrael's wife also kind of wanted him to stop. It was killing him. The dependence on the venom was not good for him. And he immediately orders her be beheaded. And she gets her head cut off. There's a lot of things being cut off. Because we also find out that, I think it was a little before, but this is another fun little fact, Azrael cut off Bruce's limbs one each year. And just slowly until he was just he's been doing this for a while. But back to the present, we find out what the fuck happened to Batman when Shiva pushed that little button thingy, and it's badass. Basically, the little thingy released a whole bunch of micro robot bats that now make up Bruce's arms and legs. So he is literally a bat, and it's cool. There's a big fight scene between the three good guys and Azrael, but without Azrael on the venom, he's kind of starting to lose a bit. But then he says, you might have taken away the venom. I'll work off my dependency for later. But for now, I just need to find another source. And he's already knocked down Bane's son. He walks over to him, steps on him, and rips his arm off and drinks the blood to get venom. That's how fucked up this is. It's nuts. So we see he's got this crazy ass smile on him. He goes, much better. It's really, really dark. And then he starts taking them all down. But Bruce isn't having it. Bruce and him start fighting real hard. And we get Bane's son walking over to this cut off like arm blade thing that has fire on it. He uses it to cauterize his own arm, crawls the rest of the way over to Azrael, and stabs him from the back to front before he can crush Batman with some penny thing. So then Azrael's kind of dying, and we get this kind of glimmer of hope. We're like, oh, things might go back to normal. Fuck no. Bruce went bad, and it's awesome. Like, it's terrifying. He's like, it's too late for that. We can't turn back. And he uses the bats in him to literally blow up. Like, in little holes everywhere blow up. Shiva and Bane's son. Jesus Christ, it's dark. And then he leans down to Azrael, who's still alive, and he's like, you weren't wrong though. Gotham is mine and I'm hers. And he's now got the crazy smile. So it's kind of this duality of both of them are crazy. And then the very last panel is Bruce fucking crucified Azrael on a bridge in Gotham. And we get a text bubble from we get a text bubble from Tempest Fignot, and it just says, "There is no hope for this one." Jesus Christ, was this dark! It was so cool though. Like, it was a little bigger than a normal single issue, but man, was it worth every page. It was so cool. The art was great, and it was a really cool story. I talked to you all about it. You know how cool it was. But yeah, I loved that issue. Next, we're going to talk about Batman 81. This one won't take me 30 minutes to talk about, because this one is basically Batman and Catwoman taking back over the city. But so we'll start from the start, and it's right where we left off in Batman 80 with Thomas Wayne holding a gun to Damian's head. He thinks he's got him, but Damian like immediately breaks free and says, "You're not family. The butler was family. Batman is family. And them, they're family." And we get this panel, and it's Robin, Batgirl, Huntress, The Signal, Orphan, and Batwoman, and other Robin surrounding Thomas Wayne. And it's cool. Then we cut to Catwoman and Batman. They're having kind of a fight with someone else. Then we cut back. There's more fighting. It's just a lot of cuts and fighting and cuts and fighting. Then the kids kind of take down Thomas eventually, and Huntress has her bow pointed at him. He's like, "Yeah, let's put an arrow in his spine." And then Tim kind of goes, "No, that's not how we do this. We offer mercy." And then Damian says, "Yes, of course, Timothy." And when he says no to mercy, then we put an arrow in his spine. Which is a great fucking line. I loved that. But then Thomas is getting up, all bloody, blood dripping from everywhere. And him and he kind of starts taking down the rest of the kids out of nowhere. He just gets this super random strength and starts beating the crap out of them. We find out that Batman... Then we cut away. We find out that Batman had a man on the inside. He had Clayface posing as the Joker so that he could kind of feed him information and stuff like that. And we get also it kind of explained to us that Batman's been planning this. He wanted everything to happen that has happened, except for all the kids getting the shit kicked out of them, maybe killed, because we never see what fully happens to them, and Thomas being completely fine. And we end with Harvey Bullock going up and stark naked except for his hat, because he's always wearing his hat, with a big target painted on him, and turning on the bat signal that now has what looks like a Bane signal, because it's kind of the face mask thing. And yeah, it was a cool issue. I dug it. It was really, really actiony, which kind of makes up for the past couple issues being a little slower. Not that they needed to be made up for, but yeah, I dug that this one was a little quicker and everything like that. Yeah, it was just really cool. It was really action packed. The art was a little off for me. It looked a little Frank Miller-y, but not quite all the way. So it wasn't my favorite of the latest Batman issues, but it was still really good. So yeah, that was Batman 81. Now for the final DC comic that I want to talk about, and that's Flash Forward issue 2. Wally West is my favorite Flash because he's the best Flash, and I will fight anyone who says it otherwise. Not actually, please don't fight me. So we pick up where we left off, of course, from from Flash Forward issue 1, with Wally holding President Superman in his arms. President Supes has got the crap kicked out of him a little bit by something, we don't know what, but we immediately find out it's some big terrifying alien dog thingy. Wally kind of fights a little bit with it. The Justice League the Justice League of America, which is the Justice League of this universe, I guess, shows up and they try to help, but they immediately think Wally's the bad guy, and then President Supes is like, no, it's not that. We get a little backstory about the thing that's attacking him, and then, sorry, I'm sniffling and stuff like that. Wally's like, no, I have to save it. I can stop this. And he starts running off, because that's what the Flash does. He runs places super, super fast. But when he gets there, he finds out that there's two teams of superheroes waiting for him. Again, they don't know who he is. And they immediately assume, as all superheroes do, because they're big dumb idiots, and the only way you get a team up is by them fighting first. They immediately think it's Wally's fault. They start trying to attack him, but Wally is the Flash, and the Flash is the best / most powerful superhero. Don't at me. So he quickly takes them all kind of down. It's just like, oh, one of them eventually tries to shoot him with lightning, and he just goes, "The fuck are you doing?" Shoots him back with lightning. That's way better. They keep fighting. Wally eventually shoots his staff thing into the encroaching Dark Multiverse, and kind of pushes it back, but there's still a big world-ending bomb coming, and we get President Superman bringing it over to him already. And we're like, "Are you looking for this?" He's like, "Yeah." Wally's really glad that his staff purged President Superman of whatever was ailing him, and they were that's kind of the end of it. They're kind of like, "We hope you stay," and Wally's like, man, kind of in his own thoughts, he's like, "Man, this was really cool. I really liked getting to be happy and be myself again, but I have to keep going." So he takes off to go save more multiverses, or more universes, I guess, not multiverses. He's going off to save the multiverse, but whatever. Then we cut to a scene of just a Mount Rushmore-esque outline of superheroes' heads, and some text bubbles that say Gnark, Commander Steel, Uncle Roy, and Fish Guy, Lagoon Boy. Those things weren't here yesterday. Are they statues or like gravestones? And then it cuts to, "Don't worry, everything will be okay, Jay. I promise. Now I'm scared, Iris. Remember when Daddy made that very same promise?" And we find out that Wally West kids are still alive, which is a huge deal. If you read Heroes in Crisis, which kind of led directly into this, Wally West basically goes to a rehab for superheroes because he's having issues, because he can remember the New 52. He can remember before Crisis. He can remember after. Like, he can remember everything that's happened. It's kind of a little fourth wall kind of break almost. But he has all these memories, and he remembers having a kid and having kids and a family and having a wife. And he can't deal with the fact that they just don't exist now. So he's struggling with that. So he goes to rehab, and he inadvertently has a mental break and kills a bunch of superheroes completely by accident. But it spirals, and he has to run away and stuff like that. But finding out his kids are alive still is a huge fucking deal, because this whole redemption arc he's on of going and saving these different universes is probably going to lead to him getting his kids back, maybe, and feeling worthy of having them still, which is really, really cool and really exciting for me, because again, Wally West is my favorite Flash. So I'm super excited for that. And that was Flash Forward issue 2, and it was awesome. The art's really cool. Yeah, I suggest you go read it. It's only on issue 2, so you can pick it up and catch up really quick. A quick little Google will catch you up on all the backstory you need to know. So, and that's all the DC books I read this week. So now we'll move on to the final comic of the week, and that is Creature Feature. This is by Vault, who's been doing their whole October line. And I don't want to spoil this one for you guys. I think you should just go out and buy it. I'll give you kind of a really brief, like crazy brief rundown of it, but go pick it up. It's super good. Basically, it's kind of this small town, and there's these kids that they're hanging out and they're playing with Ouija boards and stuff like that, as kids do, because they're dumb and they want to conjure demons to eat them. Because apparently that's a fun thing to do. Get murdered by demons and ghosts and ghouls and all the things. Don't fuck with that shit, kids. So they're doing that, and one of them's a super bitch, and she's basically trying to be in charge. We kind of get two stories at once throughout the whole thing. So they do end up tying together. So basically, the super bitch eventually stops being quite so mean. They go out to the beach. Well, she stops being quite so mean after they go out to the beach, and one of the kids falls. Then big monsters show up. Bad stuff happens. It's kind of. It reminds me of like an old, like B horror movie a little bit. Like, you know, the old monster movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon and stuff like that. It's kind of like that. And it was really fucking cool. It was, again, cult classic Creature Feature is exactly what I wanted. And since it's the spooky season, I think everyone should go pick it up. It's super, super good. And yeah, again, I don't want to ruin it. So I want you to just go read it. I don't want to tell you the whole story of it. Maybe next week. But yeah, that's all the comics I read this week. Alright, so let's get into the big topic this week. So, I thought that we would talk about some cool, spooky books to celebrate October, fall, Halloween, the best holiday. So I got a big old stack, and I'm going to run through a couple of them. I'm not going to tell you entire synopsises. I'm just going to tell you that these are some of my favorite spooky books that I've either read at all or that I've read recently. So let's jump into them. And why don't we start with some trades? And then we'll get into what I like right now as spooky books. So this is my big stack of trade suggestions for the spooky season. So real quick rundown of them. We got Wytches, Afterlife with Archie, American Vampire, Hellboy, Nameless, and Swamp Thing. Now there is one that I don't have currently, / I couldn't find, but I fucking love, and that's Arkham Asylum. It's a super, super good book. It's dark as hell. Also The Long Halloween. Those are two really, really good Batman kind of Halloween. One has Long Halloween in it. Come on now. You gotta read it every Halloween. But these are some that are maybe not, well, Swamp Thing's pretty popular, but the rest of them are maybe a little less. Maybe you haven't heard of, didn't think of them, that kind of thing. So we'll run over them really, really quickly. We'll start with Afterlife with Archie, which is an amazing book. Like, it's nothing like the Archie comics you think of that like they sell at like the grocery store and stuff like that. It's really dark. It made me cry. It makes me cry every time. Not because it's scary, but because something in it happens that makes me cry every time. But basically, the whole book is what? So, the start is Jughead's dog gets run over. Immediately, my heartstrings. Sabrina the Teenage Witch brings it back. Hot dog's not the same. Hot dog bites Jughead. Jughead turns into a zombie. And the zombie apocalypse starts. And holy shit, it's so good. The art in it's amazing. It's very like pop art. Francesco Francavilla did it. It's awesome. Yeah, it's just super, super cool. Super grim, but also there's kind of a ray of hope at the end. Not really, but like a little bit. But it's a super cool zombie book that I think if you're in the mood for kind of a spooky, you want almost like a turn off all the lights except for one, eat some popcorn, stuff like that. That's the book I think you should read. It's really good zombie book. Definitely check it out. The next one, Wytches, which is a Scott Snyder book with art by Jock. Fuck, the art in this is so goddamn cool. I'll throw up some shots of it, but it's so cool. If you're listening on audio podcasts, just Google it. It's spelled Wytches. It's so cool. It's I gush about this book because I think it's probably my favorite horror book. I don't know that I want to make that claim, but it's right up there. But basically, the concept behind it is, what if witches weren't the women at the cauldrons doing the spells? What if they were something far more ancient? Something that lived out in the woods, that was always there, that you could make deals with, you could make bargains with. And it follows kind of the story of, basically, you can pledge people to these ancient deities in the forest, and they'll give you something in return. And it follows along with this young, like high school age girl who's been pledged, and her kind of some weird shit starting to happen to her. It's hard to go into too many details without ruining. I don't want to ruin these books for you, but it's super, super good. And Scott Snyder pulls from a little bit of kind of his inner fears and stuff like that as he's writing it. And basically, when he was young, Scott Snyder, if you watch this, correct me. But from my understanding, the dedication at the back and stuff like that, basically, there was this old forest that was always kind of this spooky place for him and stuff like that. So he wanted to kind of draw on something that frightened him to try and write a frightening story. And it worked out really, really good. I love this book. It's great. It's a really good horror book. Volume 2 is in the works. And Volume 1.5, which was called Bad Egg, was published in Image Previews, I believe. So you should be able to pick that up pretty simply. But yeah, Wytches is a really, really good book. It's got really cool art style, and it is kind of a little more psychological, kind of spooky. Like, it's not straight up, here's monsters and demons and ghosts and stuff, run away! But it is very like, oh, that's fucking eerie. That's like, it's really, really good. I think you should check it out. The next, I don't know what I've been doing. The next one I want to suggest for the spooky season is American Vampire, which is another Scott Snyder book. But Stephen King also worked on it. He only worked on, I believe, a couple issues. He didn't write the whole thing, so. If you've seen Interview with a Vampire or read the book by Anne Rice, you kind of get that vibe a little bit from it. The art is by Oh fuck, I can't say his last name. Raphael Albuquerque. Albuquerque. Whatever. I'm gonna put it up. So it looks really cool. This one's got a little bit more of a comic-y look to it, like with bold black lines and more rich colors and stuff like that. But basically, the premise behind American Vampire is basically vampires through different eras of America. And it follows one girl who's an actress in, I want to say, I don't even want to hazard a guess. Hang on. '20s. Hey, I was gonna guess right. 1925. So she's trying to be an actress and break into the scene and stuff like that, and then it kind of goes from there. It's this really cool, almost a period piece kind of thing about this girl who gets turned into a vampire and what it's like for her through the decades and stuff like that. Again, it's very Interview with a Vampire-y, but it's more stuff happens, I think. At least in the movie Interview with a Vampire showed. I haven't read the book in its entirety. I've read a little bit, but yeah, that would be the vampire book I suggest. So now we've got zombies, we've got witches in a form, we've got vampires. So why don't we talk about demons? Hellboy. Everybody should read Hellboy. Hellboy's amazing. Meg Magnolia kills it. Read Hellboy. The art style is incredible, as always. Again, kind of almost similar to Afterlife with Archie, more of a pop art kind of style, with that really, really dark black and then very vibrant splashes of color and just kind of the right places to highlight what characters look like and stuff like that. But check out Hellboy Volume 1, Seeds of Destruction. It's a great anytime read, but especially around Halloween and stuff like that. You get your dose of monsters and ghosts and vampires and everything in it, while still having a very rich through storyline. If you're looking for Volume 1, it's Seed of Destruction. And if you saw the Guillermo del Toro Hellboy, it's similar-ish. They used this volume to kind of start that one, as opposed to the newer Hellboy that came out earlier this year, I believe, maybe 2018. They kind of went a different direction with it a little bit, but you get. Anyways, but yeah, definitely read Hellboy: Seed of Destruction. It's a really, really good Halloween read. The art's super, super cool. It's kind of hard to sell people on comics when they. Well, I guess I can show some of you the art, but for audio listeners, as I'm going through, I do recommend you kind of look up some images and stuff like that if something appeals to you in any way, shape, or form. The next book that I will suggest is Nameless. Now, this might be kind of one not a lot of you heard about, or those of you in the comic who are huge into comics will probably have heard of it, but maybe you didn't pick it up for whatever reason. It was kind of weird and out of your realm. It's a super good sci-fi horror. If you've seen Event Horizon, I'm going to use a lot of movies to try and relate to these, just because I watch a ton of movies too, so it's easy for me. But if you've seen Event Horizon, it's similar-ish. So basically, these astronauts, these scientists, are off in space, and they're looking at this thing, this interdimensional hellscape thing. They don't know exactly what it is. They know it's ancient, and they know it's out in space, which is already horrifying because space is scary as shit. But so they go to investigate, and bad stuff immediately starts to happen to them. It's basically, it kind of seems ghosts in space for a while, which is a cool concept, but then it becomes all of your worst nightmares in space. It's very culty. It's very I don't know how else to describe it. It's one you have to read a couple times, because me and some of the guys when I was working at the comic book store read it at around the same time, and we all kind of were trying to figure out what the fuck happened at the end. I'm not going to ruin it, but we came down to there's 3 possible endings, all of which could have happened, because it leaves it very ambiguous with what actually goes on at the end. So yeah, definitely check out Nameless. It's so weird. It's basically about a nameless horror out in space doing things. It's by Grant Morrison. So you know it's weird and psychedelic, but also amazingly well written. Yeah, I think I highly recommend Nameless. It's another one that's kind of hard to say exactly what's happening, because there is so much that happens and it's all spooky. So if you're into sci-fi horror stuff, Nameless is the one I would recommend you read this Halloween. And the final one that I have here with me, but not the final one I'll talk about, is Swamp Thing. And this is the Alan Moore run of Swamp Thing, the real old one. And it's just so good. Swamp Thing, this book is probably my favorite comic. Super well written. It's got that classic, like, old comic look to it. It's still printed on newsprint, I believe, so you get that kind of old feel. And for me, it's a lot of reading comics is kind of tactile. I like how the different books feel and stuff like that. Anywho, I'm going kind of on a tangent there. But we kind of get, it's not a Swamp Thing origin. We kind of get the impression that Swamp Thing's been around, but this is kind of a reintroduction after one of his greatest foes is dead. And that we jump in. You don't have to worry about going back and reading some of the older stuff. I would recommend it because it is well written and it is good too. But again, it's not fully necessary. I would say if you just read this one, you're good. But we get an introduction to the Floronic Man. Basically in this, Swamp Thing kind of gets captured at some point. They put him on ice. We kind of get our introduction to the Floronic Man, who becomes a big villain later on for Swamp Thing and stuff like that. And basically we get these 2 beings that are both plant matter, basically, kind of at odds with one another of how they should go about things, because the Floronic Man takes things to an extreme and thinks that getting rid of all animal life is the answer. You have to protect the green. You have to protect, like, we have to kill all the animals. They are constantly killing all the plants. And then you kind of get Swamp Thing, who's on the other side of that. Like, no, everything needs to be in balance. Again, it's really, really well written. Alan Moore does a great fucking job with it. And I would say it's a great read. It's like Hellboy. It's a great read anytime. But if you're in the mood for a really good, more or less monster story, I would suggest reading it. It's really great. So those are the ones I have here with me. And those are basically all the ones I wanted to talk about. I would quickly suggest a couple other things. One of which is Black Monday Murders, which I have somewhere. But it's basically, really quickly summarized, it's what if the New York Stock Exchange crash was what if, how do I describe it? It's basically, what if the stock market was kind of manipulated by cult shit? It's really, really cool. It doesn't, like, that description doesn't make it sound great, but it is really good, so definitely check it out. Again, Arkham Asylum's really great. It's a deep dive into, like, Batman and his rogues and what makes him and stuff like that. It's, again, super dark. But it's super cool. Batman Long Halloween is another one. Again, it has Halloween in the name. Come on. Basically, there's a holiday killer killing off people every holiday. Each issue, I think it was a 12-issue series, takes place on a different holiday, or a different month of the year and a different holiday. So check that one out too. It's a classic. Kristen, you got any books? Any Halloween-y books? Little Witch Academia. If you're into manga, check out Little Witch Academia if you want a really cute,
Yeah, that's awesome.
really cute Halloween kind of book. Another manga would be Soul Eater. It's very, very Halloween-y. It's got like moons and witches and everything like that constantly in it. Yeah. But that's it for my big topic. I gotta talk to you guys still about what I'm reading right now that I like that's kind of spooky and Halloween themed. So we'll start with the first two, and those are Cult Classic Creature Feature and The Plot. Both of them are Vault comics. Both of them are really good. Vault's basically doing this whole fall spooky kind of themed month thing where they're releasing a bunch of cool, like, kind of spookier books, and I'm really digging it. They're coming out with another one, I believe next week. Let me double check that really quick. Nope, not next week. November 13th, called Black Stars Above, which looks really, really good. I'm really excited to get that one, and I highly recommend you guys pick it up too, if you get the chance. I think it'll be another one of Vault's comics that completely sell out really quickly. So keep an eye out for that unless you don't mind a second printing or something like that. And the other one that I've been really, really digging that I talked about today already is Something's Killing the Children. It's a super good book. There's big monsters. It's not really spooky, but it's a horror themed book. It's just not necessarily scary yet. I'm sure it will get a little more frightening, but it's really, really good. So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now that I'd recommend. If you want something kind of spooky, check out Vault Comics. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff right now with that kind of genre. And check out Something is Killing the Children. Those are definitely some really cool horror-themed books that you can check out for this month. And yeah, so now that's it for the big topic. We'll move on to what's new, or what I'm reading next week. Alright, so let's talk about what I'm reading next week really, really quickly. It's not too big a list. It's not small, but it's not big. So I am getting Aquaman's annual. That's the second annual. Batman Beyond number 37. Curse of the White Knight number 4. Detective Comics number 1014. Flash number 81. And Justice League Dark number 16. Of those, I'm probably most excited for Flash number 81. Flash number 80 left off at a really cool place. Barry had just been run through by the Black Flash. So I'm really excited to see what's happening because his speed healing wasn't really working and stuff like that. There was a couple little hitches, so we'll see what happens to Barry. And from Marvel Comics, and this is the last comic I am getting next week, it is King Thor number 2. King Thor number 1 was really, really cool because it reintroduced the God Butcher, which is from Jason Aaron's run. So it reintroduced the God Butcher, which is really, really cool. I love that character. It was a really great story arc. And really, I think it was 2 or 3 trades long of just dealing with that guy. So it's kind of ending out Jason Aaron's run, or his kind of Thor storyline that started with that, which started with Thor, God of Thunder, and then kind of went through Mighty Thor, and is now ending out with King Thor. So I'm really, really hyped to see that. I think that'll be probably, out of the list here, probably my favorite comic next week. Right now, I'll probably eat my words on that later. Something will be a sleeper hit and really knock my socks off, but that's it. See, not too big a list. Not small, but not too big. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and I will catch you next week. See ya. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to see more from me, Sean Thompson, talking about comics and stuff like that. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. Thanks so much.